Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're tuning in from. I'm gonna be taking you through a session. My name is Dr. Gameli Mawudor. I am an offensive security researcher. I love everything when it comes to hacking, part of things. I was part of the tribe of hackers blue team in 2020. I serve on a few global boards, including EC Council for CTIA and CPEN, USIU, Moringa School, Ushahidi, Cybersafe Foundation, and also the blockchain investigation. Also run a company called CyberGuard Africa, and of course Africahackon. This is my 390th presentation as I speak to you right now. And I teach 5 cybersecurity courses at a university called Strathmore University, and also practice Kung Fu. So I'm also in the physical security space in case anybody wants to mess with me. So today we're going to be talking about threat monitoring and threat intelligence, and things that maybe you've never thought about when it comes to your organization, how you're basically trying to work things through. I'll be talking about those. When it comes to how do you modernize your security operations center, your processes, your intelligence as well, to be able to make sure that you are resilient and be able to fight the cyber criminals. So if you look at the modern architecture, there's the redefinition is asset inventory is a foundation for every activity. Whether you're assessing the risk, you're detecting risk, you're responding to incidents, or it all begins with understanding or knowing exactly what are you defending. So many of us have so many tools in our organizations that we are monitoring firewalls. I was talking to a client some time back recently, and he says we have our firewall, we have our EDR, we have this, we have that, we have tools, we have everything. And I asked him, what exactly are you trying to monitor? What exactly are you trying to achieve? What are you protecting? What are you trying to detect? And what happens when something breaks? Will you be able to detect on time, or will you be able to actually know where to go fix that particular issue? Think about it this way. If you have a house where you have a leakage in your water system, you have to be able to understand exactly which area you're going to actually fix, or where the water is leaking from, which room, which part is broken, and you have to detect, was it a rat which basically infiltrated your house, or you're trying to find out how do you protect those pipes maybe from actually breaking in the near future. So when it comes to threat detection maturity level, or DML as we call it for short, is a model that helps to assess how mature your detection capabilities are. And it's beyond just ingesting threat feeds into security operation tools. There's a very famous researcher called Ryan Stillions makes a strong case about moving detection up the stack from fundamental indicators to tools to tactics, techniques, and procedures, and even understanding why an adversary is in your network. And we're going to look a little bit more into that later. Why is this adversary targeting me? Who am I? Why does it want from me? And how can we basically stop that from happening? Detection without context is just a lot of noise, and we want to be able to see how do you separate signal from noise. Prevention alone is not enough. It will fail eventually, and eventually gets to fail because you can't prevent every single attack. And mature programs to detect behavior and not just signatures. Signatures are okay, you know a particular pattern, and if you know the particular pattern of signatures you have, your adversary also knows that signature. They also know how you detect. They know that you are going to be protected against a particular methodology. So they know, or they want to see how can they bypass the particular methodology that you have. So great detection adds value from a breach when a breach escalates. And Ryan Stillion also gave this breakdown where the DML, which is threat detection maturity level, number 876, talking about the goals, the strategy you want to put in place, the tactics you want to be able to do that. When is what they want. When it comes to how they can get it, you want to look at the techniques, the procedures, the tools, and how do they plan to get it. So you have to look at the techniques. What procedures are they going to implement? What tools are they basically going to use to actually infiltrate your network or systems? And then a 2 and 1 is host, network artifacts, atomic indicators, evidence left during or after the act. If they try to get into your network or the systems, or they try to breach a particular asset that you have, how did they get in? what are the artifacts they've left behind? Did they scan 1,000 ports? Did they try to run the tool in the network? Was it an Nmap scan? Was it a was it a responder tool? Was it any other tool that was able to be run? Was it, if it was a Windows environment, was it PowerShell? Was it a DLL attack? Was it a bash? Was it a BAT script that was run? You need to understand some of those details and be able to look at. Now, though this Earth Cacher campaign is a new some of the TTPs that were run, and it shows a very interesting aspect of security. And I'm going to show you a practical one that I tried to do some time back. So looking at this, there was an initial access. The initial access was a spear phishing email sent from a compromised legitimate account. And getting this account is not that difficult because there's so many portals right now where you can actually find credentials that are leaking. And there's a very high chance that some of the accounts, some of these organizations don't even have any kind of two-step verification activated. So they're able to actually go and get details from there, log in as the person and send an email. Or they send an email using spear phishing, email spoofing techniques, where they actually abuse your SPF and DMARC records to be able to send an email as you. So yes, I can send an email as you to another person in the organization, and it will come out looking like it came from you. Or the most common one is they change a letter somewhere in the email, in the domain registration. They try to send a number of emails to propagate to make it look a bit legitimate before they send the emails out. And then there's so many tools to be able to do that. Now, this email contained OneDrive links, which actually pointed to zip archives, and the zip file contained malicious Excel sheets. Why Excel is actually used for malicious delivery of payloads is the fact that you can actually hide them in the macro enable part of things, and I'll show you something. So this, they call that the particular dropper here, is we call this roaming mouse. So roaming mouse dropper was an Excel sheet which contains a VBA macros that trigger only after the interaction of clicking the cell, and allows the malware to be able to evade sandbox analysis. And upon activation, it drops and executes a malware routine known as roaming mouse. The roaming mouse basically decodes itself. It decodes the encoded zip file, embeds itself. Then basically it contains some tools or some extra legitimate executables by a company called Just Systems. And Just Systems, basically, these tools are basically legitimate tools. But remember, a dropper is basically working with other which is the malware working with legitimate application to be able to drop, and they actually be able to actually drop that on the system, remotely be able to control the system. So this is just a diagrammatic representation as to how that works. Let me show you a simple example of a sample that I tried to recreate. So if you look at this video, start from here. I basically tried to set up a command and control on the left. On the right is a zip file that I sent to myself. Now, this zip file, I use basically Empire, very old version. The target, which is me, if you look at it, it said send via SendGrid. So I used the SendGrid API to be able to send this email and practically just send an Excel sheet to somebody. This is a very long time ago, but it still works. And I send the person saying the email, the password is blank. So the person types the word blank, and that file gets to be extracted onto the desktop. So as you can see, this attacker, his anti-malware solutions are still there, and he basically goes to actually double click on this. This is an environment that I use for testing. The attacker on the left is still waiting for a connection from the victim, and the victim opens their Microsoft Excel, they enable editing, but look exactly what happens when they enable content. So the enable of content basically allows the hacker to be able to actually do a dropper. So this is a very similar one to that particular campaign. So it drops 3 files. The first one is HTA, which is HTML, so it doesn't really see that as a malware, but that HTA has a PowerShell script, and that PowerShell script is encoded and basically goes to actually drop and put the real malware, which is a executable file. And if you go to see the macro, I encrypted it as well, so nobody will be able to see the content of the macro. And at this point, because a droplet runs in memory, it makes it very difficult for the attacker to be able to know what is happening. And with this, you have access to the system. You're able to actually run commands. You're able to do a lateral movement through the entire system or the computer or the network. And here, all I wanted to do is to show a pop-up saying, "Hello, hacked." So this basically just pops up as something on the target screen. So that is one method that it's just to explain that particular malware that I was showing earlier before. So let me get back to the presentation. So this is a presentation. But so what are the detection mechanisms or the three layers of modern security operations center? There's a data layer which ingests and routes security telemetry, and this point is an entry point onto the SOC, handles data ingestion, so your EDR system, your network detection tools, your cloud security logs, anything that logs should be able to actually take it to this, which is the data layer. We have the detection and analytics layer, which basically helps to store, detect, analyze. So storing of security data, looking at rule-based detections, which we cannot avoid, and also running analytics at scale to be able to see exactly separating the signal from noise is being done at this stage. And then it's passed across all the SIEMs, the data platforms, the XDRs you have. But the value you get on this layer depends on the data quality that you have. A lot of people will have a lot of, for lack of a better word, unclean data or bogus data, and that data being sent through to the Security Operations Center, if not clean, will take a long time to be able to actually separate that signal from noise. Then we have the response and decision layer, where AI augmented layer helps with be able to actually set the triage, alert enrichment, automate the low-level task, faster decision making for SOC teams. If you think that right now you're going to have a level 1 SOC team that will be on site, it's not there anymore. AI tools are able to do the level 1 SOCs when you have 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 alerts, depending on the size of your environment. AI tools are able to do level 1 to separate all of those, clean them up, see what is repetitive, see exactly what is really true, what is it a false alarm as well, and be able to actually take that to the security operation teams of level 2, 3, and 4 to know exactly what to focus on, especially what to focus on, and be able to actually make sense of it. So incidents will keep on growing, and this layer is becoming key to reducing analyst fatigue and helps to also accelerate response. Analysts are forever getting tired. They are too swamped with a lot of alerts. That's why AI tools are going to help in being able to do the low-level tasks, the basic common things. That separation of signal from noise has to be done at a very rudimentary stage. Otherwise, they'll be spending the whole day looking at screens and trying to analyze attacks. There'll be false alarms. Cyber criminals these days are also trying to make sure they send you a lot of bogus data where they set up environments to fool you, to make sure that you're actually looking at the wrong thing whilst the real attack is going on. So you can automate some of these processes using things like N8N. We wrote a sample like this to be able to send alerts to Discord. This is for security news, but it's an example. And then you can add us, which are able to check IOC's extraction. So some of these can basically be extracted, and automation can be done. What is the future of Security Operations Center? I got this diagram from software analysts called Cyber Research, and we're looking at the fact that we have the tools with the data fabric where we have ingestion, and we have how we store the detection analytics. If you look at the previous slides that I talked about, and then how do we respond to them? Now, from the EDRs, the network devices, from that to also looking at your emails, cloud, and entities. You're looking at how to be able to actually put everything together and start doing security orchestration, automation, and response. What that basically means is that you want to automate certain processes. Let me give a typical example. You have a user who has logged into the network, and all of a sudden he's been logged out for about the next 5 seconds. He's trying a few passwords, it's not working, and all of a sudden the person's account has logged in, but from a different location. Different locations say that is from any other country. So whichever another country which is not closed, this person was not able to actually travel from one place to the other, and the person was not using a VPN. meaning that person's account has been compromised. We call this the impossible traveler. Now, a security operations center, a SOA tool, is supposed to automatically analyze that particular incident because the SIM would have picked it up, that somebody has moved from one place to the other too fast, see the details of where is the IP addresses coming from, how was the reputation of that IP address, how did this person log in from those places, how many times did the person try to log in, and take an automated action by trying to check the MAC address or kick out the person's account from the Active Directory, and then now be able to actually give the Security Operations Center team level 2, 3, and 4 to actually go into proper analysis. So having context and being able to actually have some of these playbooks put in place will help you to actually know how to automate some of these processes. Long gone are the days where you have to manually get to do this. So it's really important to be able to actually get that automated. Be it an email security. If an email has been sent and the email has a password in the email saying the attachment we've sent you contains some sort of document that you're supposed to fill. If somebody is not comfortable with that, or you have a security operations center tools that have been integrated, the SOA tool is supposed to automatically analyze that email, decrypt it, extract the files, analyze the content of the macro, like I showed you earlier on, and be able to make a decision as to where to put it. So there's a lot of decisions has to be made from cloud systems, people scanning your cloud too much, your EDRs and network devices, new MAC address being introduced in your network has to be automatically detected and treated as soon as possible. So what is incident response? So let's move from that to the part of incident response and where incident response is getting to. When looking at incident response, there's also the maturity level of a modern security operations center model, where we're looking at operations, applications, we're looking at endpoint, we're looking at infrastructure. So for operations perspective, if you look at your asset management, I ask companies, a lot of people, how many devices do you have in your network? They say, we don't know. We have about 300, about 200, about 250. There's never a definite amount that most people get to talk about when it comes to the number of assets they have. And what asset is of greatest risk? And that asset, how are you protecting that asset? If you look at your event and monitoring management, you have vulnerability and patch management. There's so many people who don't patch any system, so the vulnerabilities that keep on coming every now and then, they're still there, and cyber criminals exploit those very frequently, be able to get access into your network. Where are these assets? Are they showing externally? Who has access to them? How many people, as you guys are sitting here right now, if you have assets in the network, who has access to your systems, when, how, and what level do they have? Because if that person is making a malicious activity, just because you're here watching Bright Talk, what will happen if they start making changes? We've seen such cases happen in the environment when we're doing investigation, only to realize that even the person who's helping you to do the investigation actually authorized somebody else to make a particular change to a network using their credentials, only to realize that that person was the perpetrator to the entire fraud case that happened. Looking at application, do you have a WAF? Do you have SSO? Do you have any identity management solutions? Do you have any database monitoring tool? How is the data encryption done from one system to the other? How are data being exchanged between systems? Endpoints. Do you have EDRs? Do you have a patch management? Do you have a NAC solution? Do you have a multi-factor solution, multi-factor authentication being put in place? But if you look at all of these, are these in a non-existent stage or the initial or repeatable stage where there are some level of work that is being done on them? So if in a defined state, for example, then you're a little bit mature. You have processes, you have ways of being able to actually automate some of those details, and you have written them down, you try them out. An optimized state, which is quite difficult for a lot of organizations to achieve, is where everything is automated. So for example, if it's patch management, there's automatic patches that are being done which are being done to systems that are obsolete. You don't have to schedule those particular patches to be done. That's an optimized state. If you have a non-existent stage in the red for EDR, that means you don't have an EDR solution anywhere in your entire network. We're moving from antiviruses to EDRs, which is endpoint detection and response tools. There's some companies who don't have a SIM, some don't have a VPN, so they just basically log into servers by SSH directly into the network or servers without ever doing any kind of VPN to actually segregate some of those. A privileged access management tool. Not everybody have that. Some are in a non-existent stage for cyber deception. So you have to map out this particular reference model to be able to understand what does your security estate look like, from assets to people to processes to the controls you want to put in place to get that done. But when you look at that, I'm not going to go through all the KPIs for incident response, but very important ones are: what is the mean time to detect, mean time to respond, mean time to contain, which is really important, and mean time to resolve any particular incident that happened. You have been hacked right now. How long does it take you to even understand exactly if it was a real hack, and how do you be able to take action on those as well? So the others are SLAs, is the root cause analysis, the percentage for automated and manual process responses that you've automated is really important to have. So I know I don't have too much time, so I'll just go through this because there's something really important at the end I want to talk about. So the detection analysis, the containment, eradication, recovery process, the post-incident activities that you have to do, and how do you report to the various stakeholders to understand exactly what has happened, what is going on, what are you preparing for in the next stage of things, and how do you want to be able to contain that. It's a case study. I will skip majority of the case study because of time, because we have about 8 minutes. So this is just an InsurTech, which have 850 employees, and they have quite a number of assets. They have been compromised by anomalous activity, and further investigation realized that there was unauthorized access to policyholder data, which compromises the PII of over 1 million customers. You can imagine the impact that is going to have on them. So they had to do detection analysis, the containment with all API keys were being changed and access tokens revoked. There's a network segmentation that was enhanced. Snapshots of affected cloud instances were taken for forensic analysis that they can know what to do the next time. And then, of course, the eradication processes and recovery was looked at. Then, of course, there's a post-incident activity that they had to look into, saying, with the forensic that has been done, what are the ways to be able to actually make sure that they don't have these issues happen again? What are the governance policies they have implemented? Policies can be done on paper, but implementing that particular policy to be able to make sure that it's actually active is really important. And of course, reporting to the CEO, to the board, the senior management and board is really important, and it has to be done within a time frame, and also looking at the financial impact. The key lessons that they're able to pick from it, and those key lessons is being able to understand exactly what happened, what are the measures that will be taken, what are they going to do to prevent this from happening again, and is cyber insurance really necessary for them as well? I've seen a lot of people take cyber insurance, but they don't know to what level of risk they're supposed to take that, or which part of their organization and asset they're supposed to take cyber insurance for, and they end up not being able to get compensated if something, or even when something actually happened. So the last part of this I want to talk about is build an environment to support what you call threat hunting simulation. When you come into threat hunting, you want to be able to know yourself. When know yourself meaning know your environment better than anybody, than insider or external threat. You want to be able to understand, if you really want to protect the environment, you have to know the environment better than anybody. How many assets do you have? Who's going to attack that environment? What will they go for first? What are your crown jewels? What is the asset of greatest risk? I keep on asking this question every time. And an asset in this case could be the CEO's laptop. It could be the CFO's laptop. It could be the head of cybersecurity. And remember, cyber criminals or hackers basically do a lot of research and reconnaissance about you and the organization. They understand who works there, why and how do they actually move. Sometimes they go as far as following a particular person in the organizations to actually see how they can compromise them. I'll give a typical scenario. I was given a bank to be able to compromise, and I knew the one person who would know me coming to a particular branch would be the CISO. And so the CISO, basically, I had to get him out of the office on a Friday. He's a Muslim. He has to go for prayers. I knew the prayer, I knew where he lived, and for that prayer to happen around his area where he goes to, I had to book a meeting with him and one of my colleagues around that area. Meaning, when he goes for prayers in the afternoon, for the fact that the meeting is around his house, he's not going to come back. That was the only way I was able to get into his. We got into his organization. We faked an email from himself to the secretary saying that we'll be coming for a meeting about loans. So they referred us to somebody else who will be able to give us details about loans. But I knew that person was on leave because the person who I could use for the loan discussion was on holiday. So we just had to go plant this little device, tiny little packet squirrel, to be able to get a VPN access into the network. Luckily for us, somebody was doing an audit, one of the big fours, and they basically brought in a vulnerable machine which had a lot of credentials being passed through the entire network. Made our hacking easy, made our work easy. So over the weekend, whilst this person is trying to do an audit and everything, we were able to actually filter the network, get all assets, scan the network, printers in the network, made us to be able to actually capture credentials, compromise them. Even the HR department tool that we're having, HRMS, we're able to set up a new employee who never existed, and this new employee actually got paid salary. So how do you have to know your enemy? Define your enemies. Are they internal? Are they external? Are they both? What is the capability? What motivates them? What do they target in your environment? And you need to know your battles. Why would they target us? How can that impact your vision and mission? Why would they target you? What are your crown jewels, your assets of greatest risk, like I talked about? How will they target you? Have you seen attempts before? What are exposed? How does that attack surface reflect? Because there is an external threat attack surface and also an internal one. People are being recruited internally to be able to carry out some of these attacks. Externally, I've seen so many systems that internally they think is actually protected, but externally it is actually being broadcast to the entire public, where cyber criminals take over in less than 10 seconds. If I was to show you how that works right now, it's so easy to be able to get that done, where you can take over, say, SMB shares, which internally was working, but externally is actually showing out. So we have to be very careful as to be able to understand what battles are we actually fighting. There are 3 Ks when it comes to threat hunting simulation, which is knowing yourself, where you have to constantly run threat hunting exercises, and you have to be accurately done in your environment to understand what are your critical assets and define how that hunting has to be. You need to know your enemy, identify the attackers, know the battles. Like, is it failed traffic analysis? Is it abnormal patterns? And if it's abnormal, how do you basically get to break that down in terms of detection as well? The endpoint part of things, remote access anomalies, Windows services, suspicious executables. I technically run as suspicious executables of different types that I get to build to see what does antivirus get to detect, what does it not get to detect, how can we get to be able to prevent that. So there's something we call a DREAM. DREAM is design, redesign, implement, operate, and monitor, where you discover and assess exactly what are your crown jewels, budget for it, the tools you need to actually get there, the personnel, the skills, the time. If you don't have the personnel, the skills, you can actually get from somewhere else. What are the practical threat modeling and risk analysis you have to understand? A lot of organizations don't do any kind of threat modeling. They don't even understand exactly what do they have to look at in the possible ways that they can get compromised. What does the attack surface look like? Your network attack surface, the data egress analysis, your network visibility tools, and you have to do red teaming. Think offensive, think like a bad guy, be a bad person at all times, and try to run that threat attack. If you go to MITRE ATT&CK framework, you'll find a lot of samples that are there to tell you exactly what real scenarios will work in your environment. Are you a financial institution? Are you in manufacturing? Which area are you in which you're able to actually understand your environment and which will work for you? You have to redesign. So people, processes, technology, as we call it PPT, not this PowerPoint presentation, but there's a fourth one, I call it controls. Controls will basically actually control the top 3 when it comes to the people, processes, and technology. If you don't have that, you don't know how to be able to threat focus, your protection mechanism that you want to cover, and also the detection and how you react to them. You can have SOC, security operation engineers, who have been trained particularly to detect some level of attacks. But if they're not able to actually know if you don't know the response time to the various kind of threats that come to you, then you have a huge gap that you're going to leave. Then, of course, documentation. We do a lot of things we do not document. We have a lot of scope or threat modeling that we don't document. And we need to actually start documenting, because the business rules regarding the handling of data and information assets, written and published security policies, written, published, has to be actioned upon. Risk analysis, data classification for a policy documentation. Is this document for finance department? Is it for HR? Is it for sales? Is it for general usage in the organization? That has to be classified before you can even know how to do your data loss prevention, for example. If you know that, you know what tools do I need to be able to put in place to make sure that data is not being shared with other people. And once you have that, you know, how do I implement this? Based on the security architecture design, how do you harden each layer, your network part of things, the baseline you want to use, device configuration, the traffic flows. You have to validate each of this implementation, and then you see, how do I now monitor everything that you've implemented? Remember, you've already discovered, assessed, you've redesigned, you've documented. You have to now see, and you've also implemented, you have to now monitor closely and start looking at details every now and then. So basically, that's it for me. I will say thank you very much. I hope this has been insightful and you've been able to learn something new. Thank you very much. So when it comes to wireless pen testing, you basically need to know how to use Kali Linux. Kali Linux is an operating system that I think is readily available. There are many others that are out there for anybody to use. But again, you can have all the tools, but if you don't know the processes of being able to actually conduct them, it will be difficult for you to do. So, and then a lot of tutorials that somebody can get online. There's no specific tools or techniques that you have to use, but it would be great for the person to do a lot of research on evil twin attacks, being able to spoof networks and the likes, and have basic understanding of how networks actually work. So I'll give it very, so we call it the living off the land. So the living off the land attacks happen a lot. So MSHTA is just one of them. I used to use MSHTA for being able to actually filtrate networks. Then later I started moving to DLLs. I started moving to not just DLL, there's PowerShell, there's quite a number of them. And you basically need to understand most of them actually are tools that basically exist in a Windows platform, allowing you to be able to use. So that's just, it's called living off the land exploitation. You can Google about it. The best way is to be able to actually block them. That's what a tool called hardened tools. Hardened tools basically will be able to actually help you to prevent some of those. So look into hardened tools. It's on GitHub. And if you do that, just know your macros might not be able to run, because this actually blocks macros, block a few others that are out there, which run arbitrarily close on your system. Yeah. This is why the slide that I shared about the maturity is really important, and you have to use get a framework to be able to use. I know some people go straight for ISO 27001, and then they start off. It takes 1 year, 2 years. They've never done anything. I say go for things like NIST framework, being able to actually see some of the easiest framework and label which environment or which domain you see as the greatest risk in terms of where do you think you're going to get compromised very easily. Then you now start treating those. If you don't write those down and be able to actually look at the various levels when it comes to operations, when it comes to tools or the techniques and everything, then you'll be running all over the place. We call that a gap analysis and risk profiling. You'll be able to actually see the people. Is it the people part of things? Is it the tools? Is it the techniques? And what is the maturity level of that particular detail? I think if I go back to the slide that I was talking about, that where is that? Can share again. I'm just share that screen. This particular one. So if you go, you have to look at your access management, your asset configuration management, your change management. Look at it. What policies do you have here? How are you doing them? Incident management. Do you have an incident management policy? Yes. Have you ever tested it? No. Then you can actually now put it in the sense of it's an initial stage, but not repeatable. Repeatable means you've done it before. There's a policy. You have a way of being able to get it. There's an ownership to it, and you're consistently being able to actually run this. So you have to look at it: operations, applications, endpoint, infrastructure. Don't do everything at once. Try to pick the bare minimum you can do, and then later see how do you actually mature those from non-existent to initial. I encourage a lot of people to be able to use open source tools. A lot of open source tools will be able to help you to understand some of this entirety of things before you start looking at the proprietary version. So use open source tools, try them out, see if it works, see what fails. If it's for example, you're looking at a security incident and event management tool like a SIM, Wazoo is there. Wazoo is technically free. Wazoo is pretty good. Before you look at others like Homa and a whole lot of other things to be able to integrate for feeds and automating that as well. The EDR tools that are free, I think I post a lot of them on my LinkedIn. If you check my LinkedIn profile, I keep repeating some of those tools and activities, and you can actually basically do a lot more before you start purchasing applications very expensive. I'm not very familiar with the 94298, but if it's for that, I think that for that risk matrix is basically you have to just basically define that risk management process and see what are the things you can actually put in place. Any kind of risk management, you have to look at various elements, and you have to classify them into various elements of things. What is the likelihood of the impact? What is insignificant? Is it insignificant? Is it minor? Is it something that is critical? Is it low? Is it medium? Is it moderate? Is it major? And if you look at that, you want to understand the likelihood, the possibility, the unlikeliness of it be able to happen, and also the rareness of it. So, for example, in this case, you're talking about print. I think if I'm right about that particular ISO, it's to do with graphics and CCTVs and the likes. I don't know if I'm right, but if I am, that I'll find out soon. You basically have to look at things like unauthorized access to printing, the printing room, the raw materials you have, any kind of malfunction of data, because that can actually lead to a content being actually getting out wrongly, and then so the possibility of, if it's for example unauthorized access to the printing room, what is the likelihood that this is going to happen? Is it possible or it's not going to be possible? What is the impact it will happen? Is it critical? And what is the risk rating that you give to it? Is it on an extreme side? Then when you look at now, what control measures do you put in place to be able to make sure that you have a security over that? It could be the fact that you now have biometric access control. You need to be able to have log reviews of that biometric. You need to look at a CCTV that you need to put in place, either outside or inside, and the likes. And sometimes you might look at a residual risk as well. So that's basically all I can talk about for that. There's no software good for incident response. You need a myriad of tools. So incident response is a process, it's not a tool. So you need to look at what does the environment have, and how do you be able to actually get to respond to those. A bunch of tools that are out there. So there's Copilot with something called Homa, HOMAR. There's SOC Fortress. There's Wazoo, or Wazoo is WAZUH, and the likes. What I like is I like a lot of open source. All of these are open source tools. I'm pro open source to tweak it as much as possible. And if I can't get anything, then now I'll be able to actually start moving to others such as before I now start moving to proprietary tools. So I like doing a lot of open source tools. Wazoo is very good. We can get some syslog integration into that. We have a Homer dashboard, which helps with the management of some of this. And we have SOC Fortress. We have SOC Fortress Copilot, which can be used to also automate some of the analysis, the threat hunting, look at the workflows that it has as well. So yeah, that's some of the things I'll say. Major roadblock is overcomplicating things. So at first I see a lot of people overcomplicating and then they don't take ownership. So you find a head of cybersecurity, a CISO, getting an application security engineer to do something, and then somebody in the SOC is also trying to take over the same process, and you're not communicating with each other. That becomes a major roadblock because you're not focusing, you're not getting to the actual things or problems that you're going to have. You need to be able to actually segregate roles and be able to synergize all of them. And the other major part of things is getting support from management. Senior management sometimes don't understand exactly what you're trying to do. They don't understand exactly where you want to get to. They don't understand ways that you want to be able to achieve certain things because we overcomplicate all the reporting of that. It's really important that when you actually harness all of those, document that particular thing. The processes that I've talked about in threat hunting, be able to actually follow that entire process and then know exactly how do you communicate that to the senior management and board. Don't go to start talking about 10,000 attacks, was a DDoS, and then there's an SMB attack and everything. No. Talk about this, the effect that will have for exposure of your assets because of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. Why you need to be able to do a pen test, why you need to be able to buy an extra firewall, why you need to buy an XDR, why you need to be able to actually minimize, or what have you done in terms of being able to minimize your threat attack surface by doing external pen tests from 100 part of incidents to like 20. Why you make sure you've made changes to minimize your attacks, which used to take you 30 minutes to be able to solve. You now have take that into 12 seconds. I have basically actually written a SOAR tool, which we reduce an incident response mechanism from 4 hours to 8 seconds. That's a very big achievement. You see, they understand such language, not just telling them that we were able to eliminate a threat attack. No. You have to be able to speak their business language and be able to translate that into business needs. Yeah. I'll say you do a lot of research. There's so many tools out there. Even if you check my LinkedIn right now, I've put a few of those. Do a lot of research, put them down, write your plan as to, with the research you've done, where do you want to get to? How do you want to get there? What have you read? What have you tried? What failed? What was a success? Once you have all of those, it basically makes it easier for you to be able to understand where you want to get to. And then there are free testing platforms. There's also a few cheaper ones like I forgot the name of this. I forgot the name of the company. It's somewhere for, at least it's an Indian company. They have really good threat hunting platforms that they give for a very small price. You try it out with them. And also, ICT Council, you have very good courses that they can be able to take for threat hunting or for threat intelligence. Go through such a course, pay for it, be able to understand before you even start to implement. Once you have all of those, it basically makes you a better security operations center engineer. I would just appreciate and say thank you for having me again. It's been a real great pleasure to be able to share the little that I have. Follow me on Instagram, Bright Gameli, on LinkedIn, Bright Gameli, on X, Bright Gameli. I'm easy to find if you Google my name. And let's get to interact. Let's get to share. This is a world of sharing, and I wish all of you a very happy and midweek. Thank you.